What's up guys, and welcome back to Techplant. Today's video is going to be about propagating spider plants. We're going to try multiple methods, so let's check it out.
Alright, so here is my spider plant. As you can see, it has tons of tiny little spiderlets, or baby spider plants. And believe it or not, mine was originally just a little cutting, just like you see in all these little spiderlets. I don't know if that's actually a term, but I'm making it one. I actually got mine from one of my best friends, and ever since then, I've just grown it out and now it's producing its own. Each one of the tiny spider plants is connected to some type of vine. It's not really a vine, it's more like a stem or something. I don't even know what you actually would call this, but you're just going to trim off the babies off of each one of these little vines. You can maybe leave like an inch just so you don't accidentally cut the baby, but it doesn't actually matter. Cutting this off right at the base would be fine as well. Once you've done that, you should have a bunch of little babies just like this. And now we're going to move on to the next step. I'm planning on doing this multiple methods just to really see which one works best. If you look closely at all the baby spider plants, you'll see that they already have a bunch of roots formed. They're just waiting for something to kind of root into. So they're pretty much ready to go to be propagated. I wanted to try something really radical and really different this time. I did notice that the roots were kind of starting to grow on some of the baby plants, so I wanted to try and see if I could just root it in 100% humidity. So I took a Tupperware and some saran wrap and created like a chamber, and then I put about an inch of water in the bottom. Once I had that set up, I poked holes in the top of the saran wrap and just put the plants in far enough where the roots were in there in the humidity but not touching the water. I really wanted to see if they would just root into the air if there was enough water in the air. Next up, I just wanted to try just plain water. That usually works for a lot of stuff that we grow, so obviously I have to include that in the experiment. All I did was put some water in a clear container. Again, it doesn't matter if it's clear or not, it just helps me see, and then I just dunked the roots under the water level and just left them there. Another one I see in the comments a lot is just rooting it right in soil, so that's what we're going to try with this one too. I'm going to stick it right in some dirt, and then water the dirt and get it nice and wet and see what happens. And lastly, for fun, I did want to try just a straight up aroid mix, some bark, perlite, a little bit of dirt, and some sphagnum moss just to see if it would root in that as well. Once I had them all potted up, now it's just time to wait. Alright, about 1 week has passed, so let's take a look at the water one. You can probably already see that there are huge root growths. It is insane. These things took off so fast in the water. I was absolutely shocked, but they are looking great. They are at least an inch long at this point. Next up was the humidity attempt. This one started to kind of work. There's a little bit of root growth here, but it is nowhere near as close or as fast as we saw with just plain water. So at this point, this is more of a pointless one. I don't think it's worth even doing this, and I would just prefer water instead of trying to do some like humidity air thing. It was cool to see that they did start to kind of root though. I'm not gonna unroot the ones that are in the soil and the aroid mix. We'll see that once a little more time has gone by. Alright, an entire month has passed since we started this propagation experiment, so let's take a look and see how they're doing. Let's start off by taking a look at what was the humidity bin. I did convert this over to straight up water propagation just because I saw how well it was working and how not well the humidity was working. Something I did kind of learn about this little experiment right here though is this is a great way to propagate a lot of plants in one single container. If you don't want to put a bunch of little plants in little separate containers, just put some saran wrap over something big and poke some holes. It works great. Looking at the roots though, they are fantastic and they have caught up with the original water propagated one nicely. They are looking very good. Looking over at our water propagated one, this one actually has put out quite a bit of growth. I mean, the leaves are actually growing pretty well and there are so many roots. A lot of people ask me if I change the water. I never change the water. I almost always top it off unless it is really getting nasty. So usually it's just topping off and that's about it. And you can see I really let this one go. But the roots don't really care too much. They are so hardy and they grow so well. They're so thick in there they almost look like a bowl of noodles. Next up, let's take a look at the aroid mix one. Once I dumped it out and took a look at it, you can see that the roots have grown pretty well. However, it has not been as well as the water. I guess the only advantage to growing it in this substrate would be you don't have to repot it because it's already potted up and there is going to be no kind of transfer shock from water to some sort of medium. So I guess it does have its positives, but we still did get decent root growth. Now lastly, let's take a look at the soil one. After dumping it out, you can see that there is very good root growth. This is more straight and standard compared to the aroid mix, probably because it doesn't have to grow around big pieces of wood or other chunky material. The nice thing about doing this in the soil and not the water is you don't have to try and transplant these later. It's just in its pot or forever home that it's going to stay in. I would say you're definitely safe to propagate it with any one of these methods. They all did work pretty well and they all resulted in a nice rooted plant. I guess the real thing is if you want to practice transferring from water to soil, you could probably do water propagation, but if you don't want to risk that transfer, you can just start it right in the soil. Just make sure you don't let it dry out too much and you just keep it nice and damp. I was actually very surprised to see how every method worked pretty darn well, and they all kind of have their advantages and disadvantages. With the water, it's a lot more vigorous and you're getting a lot more roots. However, you might have to transfer it over and there might be some transfer shock. With the soil, it's not as fast and it's not as hardy, I would say, but you don't have to do any transferring, so it's ready to go as soon as it roots in.
Well guys, that pretty much sums up this video. I hope you liked it and really learned that you can propagate these in almost anything. They're really hardy and they really root well. As always guys, may your plants grow strong and healthy. I'll see you next time.